Okay, my name is Jen Gallup. I'm the Vice President of Programs for the League of Women Voters. Our president couldn't be here today, but she sends her warm wishes. This is?
I'm Kim Ritter. I'm this year's membership chair.
And we want to welcome, especially the people who are not members of the League, but we want everybody, we are welcome and glad that you're all here. But if you're not a member of the League, I really want to invite you to think about getting involved in an organization that is almost 100 years old. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. And that is political, but not partisan. And that is committed to harmonious, to whatever extent possible, conversation rather than diatribe and rancor. We want to have conversations about the issues so that we can really understand another person or another perspective from another group within the country, within our community. So I want to just welcome you to the League and let you know that if you are interested in becoming a member, here's some of the things that are coming up just in the next few weeks. On October 19th, if you are interested in doing forums where candidates debate one another, like mayoral candidates or candidates for a congressional office, there is a learning forum for doing that, for doing voter registration, for doing pros and cons, which I'll talk about in just a minute. That is available on October 19th. On December 14th, we have a little holiday party. That's how you get to know the League. If you're interested in advocacy, and we'll talk about advocacy versus voter education as part of our mission, on November 16th, we're going to be working on homelessness in Long Beach and what is happening in the city on the latest set of initiatives around homelessness. On January 19th, we're very proud we partner with the Aquarium of the Pacific, and we've been doing this for
6 years.
This will be 6 years. Where we have a whole panel of experts on climate change and the solutions that we, as individuals and as a community, can advocate for and make changes in. On March 21st, we're going to be talking about driving participation in the census. Really important that California be counted fully so that we get the money coming from us on a federal level and we are able to understand who lives in our communities and what their needs are. And then on February 15th, we're really excited about this. February 14th is actually the 100-year anniversary of the League of Women Voters, and we will be having a film festival, a film showing at the Art Theater in Long Beach, and we're really excited about that. So if any of that sounds interesting, or any of the things we're going to talk about in just a moment sound interesting, we invite you to take a look at us on our League of Women Voters.
lwvlongbeach.org.
There we go. That's our
I'm the webmaster, so that's where that's coming
from. That's our website. Or if you're interested in joining, please talk to any of us who are presenting here today. Members, could you raise your hand? So anybody with their hand up right now, come talk to us about what membership in the League is all about. Okay, so right now we're going to do a little bit of we've got like 6 minutes, we're going to do a little bit of a very rapid fire history of women's suffrage. And I apologize, I cannot get connected to the projector. So you're just going to have to listen to me talk. So let me come a little closer. I'm spilling my coffee. Okay, you probably know this. This is just a reminder. 1848, there was a convention called the Seneca Falls Convention. In that, it was the first time that anybody wrote down that we should have suffrage for women. 1848. When did it actually get approved? 1920. Okay, so you know what we're up against. The proposal of the 15th Amendment came along in the 1860s, and that was a dark chapter in our history. You might remember that the 15th Amendment was to allow African American males the vote, and it split the suffrage movement in half. Some of our suffragettes wanted the feeling was that if one person can't vote, then we need voting rights for everybody. Everybody should be included. Others felt that, and Susan B. Anthony was among these, felt that we had been fighting for voting rights for a while. We needed to come first, and it split the group in half. One group became the National Women's Suffrage Association, and they took a kind of a gentler approach. That was Lucy Stone and Henry Blackwell. That's the American women's suffrage, and they took a gentler approach. They worked with the states, they went behind the scenes, they cajoled, they convinced, they persuaded, and they were pretty effective. They got Wyoming granted women full suffrage in 1869. Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, on the other hand, formed the National Women's Suffrage Association, and they did things like dress up as men and go to the polls. They supported a free love candidate for president in the 1870s. Can you imagine a free love candidate? Shocking! And then, so they were very high profile and equally effective in their own way by really drawing a lot of attention to the issue. Alice Stone Blackwell, the daughter of Lucy Stone and Henry Blackwell, actually unified the two groups. They split apart again, but they effected a unification of the groups in 1890, and they took turns. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony took turns being president. So raucous, calm, and persuasive, raucous, calm, and persuasive. By 1910, almost every Western state had granted women the right to vote. So the only thing that was missing was that federal right to vote. So tactics began to shift because women were getting really darned impatient. So in 1913, there was a parade. It was the day before Woodrow Wilson's inaugural parade, and he was bummed because there were a whole bunch of people there and the attention was not on him. It was on all these women, and it was considered scandalous. And a lot of the women were in danger. They were attacked. And folks like the Boy Scouts and a few other people had to rescue some women who were being physically, brutally attacked by a mob of men who were very much objecting to the idea that women should be allowed to vote. There were also protests that began in 1917 in front of the White House. For some reason, women were suddenly declared illegally protesting when people had been protesting in front of the White House for years, and they were thrown in jail later that year. And that's the part that I would really love for you to take a look at. I've got some reference materials I'll leave on the back table. Women went to jail in horrific conditions. They were force-fed, they were brutalized, they were handcuffed with their arms up to the bars on the jail, and then they had to appear in court, and they couldn't stand. Some of them had to be lying down in court. And that was what began to shift, because the public was all over that. And even Woodrow Wilson gave up, and in exchange for the National Women's Suffrage Association support for World War I, he declared that women should have the right to vote. It still took a year for the House of Representatives to pass it and have it be approved by the Senate. That was in 1919. And what was lucky is that within 6 days, 6 states had ratified it, and by March of 1920, 35 states had ratified the 19th Amendment. Several were barred because of loopholes in their constitution from voting on it, and every state but Tennessee besides that had rejected it. So it came down to Tennessee, and that vote was scheduled for August 18th, 1920. And it came down to one young man whose name was, who knows?
Harry Burns.
Harry Burns, 23 years old, adamantly opposed to women's suffrage. But his mother gave him a note that morning. And she said, vote for women's votes. And he did.
Oh.
So just remember how powerful we are as mothers. So prior to that, 6 months earlier, in February of 1920, Carrie Chapman Catt proposed the League of Women Voters as a mighty political experiment, because she knew that once women had the right to vote, if they didn't have information, they would just vote the way their husbands told them to. So she launched this, she was the founding member of the League of Women Voters, and their purpose was to carry out their new responsibilities and to use their power to shape public policy.
All right, so the mission statement of the League of Women Voters is, I just read blank. Sorry.
Oh, you can take it.
It's empowering voters and defending democracy. And we do that in two ways. First is our voter education component, and the second is our advocacy. And a lot of times when we get involved in advocacy, we want to keep that education advocacy, those two functions separate. But when we do our advocacy, it confuses people because we have this nonpartisan stance, but then it's, well, you're advocating for something. So what does that mean in the context of being a nonpartisan organization?
So what we do as a league is we choose an issue and we go all over the country. Every league has the opportunity to hold a meeting on what should the position of the League of Women Voters be on this particular issue. The one I most recently remember was immigration. And just like the country, it was an incredibly intense and animated conversation. Incredibly intense. People hold very powerful views. But the league came to consensus on what we believe our immigration policy should be, and once we have that position, now we can lobby, we can support additional legislation, we can suggest that people write their congresspeople and ask that they vote for a particular piece of legislation, and we work on a particular issue that way.
On the other hand, because elections are our chance to stand up what matters most to us in our communities and to our families, we contribute to several digital platforms and whole community events like this to give straightforward information about candidates, ballot issues, and even down to the mechanics of registering to vote and actually casting your ballot. Some of those events include candidate forums, which Jan spoke about. We have a very specific process for doing that to make sure they are fair and impartial. We do pros and cons presentations, which remember last year or the year before when California, I think we had like
20, well, altogether we had 25 ballot issues.
25 ballot issues. I mean, how confusing was that? So we go out and we give nonpartisan, just factual information about what's on the ballot. We do all kinds of voter registration events. For example, last year we had 2 at Cal State Long Beach. We did one at Liberation Brewing. We attended the Wonder Women in Tech Conference in Long Beach. We've even done voter registration at the Long Beach Pagan Festival. And we also did...
That was fun.
Although I have to say, we didn't register for that one because pagans all seem to be very politically active, so they were all registered. And then we did a kind benefit concert, which was to raise money for children in detention at the border. And we've done all kinds of member and community events like we're doing today, and sometimes we even do mock elections in the high schools to teach young people about the voting process.
So a few other issues in the early days of League of Women Voters. By the way, we were formed in 1920. By 1924, there were 346 leagues out of 433 congressional districts.
Wow.
That's how fast we moved. In the 40s, we consulted on the conference to establish the United Nations. In the 60s, we were calling for recognition of China. In the 70s, we were fighting for the Equal Rights Amendment, direct election of the president, and campaign finance reform. In the 80s, the Voter Rights Act, Tax Reform Act, and lobbied for Senate approval of the Nuclear Forces Treaty. In 1990, we were supporting the National Voting Rights Act. In Long Beach, we have positions on homelessness, recreational resources, housing, police and community relations, natural gas issues around the port, the shoreline element. We are involved and have positions on all of those. If it's something that's of interest or an issue that's coming up on that, we can get involved. But we never combine the two things at the same time. So when we are doing a candidate forum, we are only in our education mode. And when we are in our social policy side and our advocating, we do not, we might register a few voters, but we don't try to combine those two things. We never, ever support or oppose a candidate or a political party. Okay? So we are partisan, we are political, but not partisan.
And we also, I want to encourage everybody to visit our website. It's on the calendar handout that we had. You can go there, you can link to the California Secretary of State to register to vote. You can link to checking your registration status if you're not sure if you moved, if you changed your registration. And then you can also link to something called votersedge.com, which allows you, when the elections are coming up, we contact all the candidates and we ask them to provide information for their candidacy. So that is a one-stop website you can go to get information on all the candidates, including the judicial candidates, which can sometimes be very difficult to find information on. So, yeah.
And on the propositions too.
And on all the propositions. So.
Okay, questions or concerns, comments about suffrage or the League of Women Voters? Go ahead.
I want to thank you for that history lesson. You did a really excellent.
Oh, good, I'm glad. I'm not going to passionate about it or anything. Good to go. Go ahead.
If I, this just pertains to me, I live in two places, northern and southern. So if I join down here, do I also need to join up there?
I'm really glad you asked. Your membership to a local league allows you membership in another league if that's where you're living part-time, in the state league, in the county league, and in the national league. Okay? One membership, and you are a member of everything. Okay? Just contact the other local league and tell them that we can verify your membership for you. Okay? Renee.
If I were not a member of the league for the last 50-something years, I really want to join that group.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, there was one last thing I wanted to mention to everybody. Since June, we've gotten 10 new members, and the Long Beach League was formed in 1924. It's one of the older leagues, and a lot of our processes and rules and traditions and way of doing things can seem very arcane to an outsider. I mean, I've been a member for 10 years, and I'm still trying to figure some of this stuff out. As membership chair this year, what we want to do is start kind of a buddy system for new members coming in. So if you are a new member, Lindsay, if you have questions or need to learn more about how we do things, as membership chair, please contact me. And if you've been a member for a long time, if you have ideas like how you wish you would have been brought into the fold a little bit more and can tell us what you think might be helpful, we want to set up a mentoring program and just a buddy system so people feel welcome and can take part. So thank you.